They thought he was just another statistic. They thought no one was watching. On a humid night in Chicago, Officer Bryce Harlan made the biggest mistake of his career. He saw a man in a hoodie and saw a target, but he didn't check the ID. He didn't know that the man he was slamming against the hood of a squad car was Special Agent Harlan Voss, a decorated federal operative deep undercover. For agonizing minutes, a corrupt system tried to break an innocent man, but those minutes later, the hunter became the hunted. You are not going to believe who walked through that precinct door. The engine of the 2008 Chevy Impala ticked as it cooled, sitting in the shadows of an alleyway off West 4th Street. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and the metallic tang of adrenaline. Special Agent Harlan Voss didn't look like a Fed. He didn't look like a hero. To anyone walking past the dimly lit alley in this forgotten slice of the city, he looked like trouble. He wore a faded charcoal hoodie, jeans that had seen better days, and a scuffed pair of Timberlands. An erratic beard covered a jawline that usually stayed clean-shaven for bureau photos. Harlan checked his watch. He wasn't here for a traffic violation. He was deep into Operation Iron Net, a sprawling RICO investigation, targeting the distribution pipeline of the chaotic Kingsman Syndicate. The FBI had intel that a high-level supplier, a ghost named Damian Kane, was meeting a contact at the dive bar across the street, the Rusty Anchor. "Come on, Kane," Harlan whispered. His eyes stayed glued to the rearview mirror. He tapped the tiny audio receiver hidden in his center console. The wire he was wearing was live, feeding directly to a surveillance van, parked blocks away, but the van was silent. Radio silence was the protocol unless an officer was down. Harlan was alone. This part of the city under the jurisdiction of the notorious 9th Precinct played by different rules. The locals called the 9th the meat grinder. It was a place where body cams frequently malfunctioned, and suspects often tripped and fell downstairs while in custody. Harlan knew the reputation. He'd read the files, but he wasn't worried about the cops tonight. He was worried about blowing his cover to the cartel. Suddenly, the alley was bathed in blinding blue and red light. Harlan cursed under his breath. He didn't turn around. He knew exactly what it was. A patrol car had nosed into the alley, blocking his exit. He kept his hands on the steering wheel, fingers spread, 10 and 2, textbook. He lowered his window as the heavy footsteps crunched against the gravel. "Engine off, keys on the dash, now!" The voice was raspy, aggressive, and bored all at once. It was a voice used to giving orders that were obeyed out of fear, not respect. Harlan complied slowly. He turned the key, the engine dying with a shudder. He placed the keys on the dashboard. "Good evening, officer," Harlan said, his voice calm, pitched to a non-threatening register. "Is there a problem?" The beam of a maglite flashlight blinded him, dancing over his face, his clothes, and the empty passenger seat. "License and registration. Do not reach for them until I tell you." Harlan squinted past the light. He could make out the nameplate on the uniform. B. Harlan. Officer Bryce Harlan. Harlan's stomach tightened. He knew that name. Harlan was a legacy hire, a 15-year veteran of the force with more excessive force complaints than commendations. He was the kind of cop who considered the badge a hunting license. Behind him stood a younger officer, female, looking nervous. Her hand hovered near her holster, but her eyes darted around the alleyway anxiously. Officer Sophia Lang, a rookie. "Officer Harlan," Harlan Voss said, keeping his eyes forward. "My wallet is in my back right pocket. My registration is in the glove box." "I didn't ask for your life story, pal. I asked for the ID." Harlan leaned in, his breath smelling of peppermint and tobacco. "What are you doing back here? This is a known drug area. You buying or selling?" "I'm waiting for a friend," Harlan lied smoothly. "We're heading to the movies." "Movies? At this hour?" Harlan scoffed, finally lowering the flashlight so Harlan Voss could see the smirk on his face. Harlan was a large man, thick-necked and red-faced, with eyes that looked like cold marbles. "Get out of the car." "Officer, with all due respect, I haven't committed a crime. I'm legally parked." "I smell marijuana," Harlan stated flatly. Harlan Voss's heart skipped a beat. He didn't smoke. The car was clean. It was the oldest trick in the book. The phantom odor that gave probable cause for a search. "There is no marijuana in this car, officer, and I don't consent to a search." Harlan's smile vanished. The air in the alleyway dropped 10 degrees. "Lang!" Harlan barked over his shoulder. "Suspect is being non-compliant. Cover me." "Officer, I am complying," Harlan Voss said, his voice hardening slightly. "I am informing you of my rights." "Your rights end where my safety begins," Harlan growled. He yanked the door open. "Out, now, or I drag you out." Harlan Voss knew he had a badge. It was tucked in a hidden Velcro pouch inside his left boot, but he couldn't reach for it. If he reached down, Harlan would shoot him. It was that simple. And if he declared he was a federal agent right here, loudly, he would blow months of undercover work and potentially get his informants killed. He had to play the part. He had to be the victim. Harlan Voss unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out of the vehicle, raising his hand slowly. He towered over Harlan by 2 inches. A fact that seemed to irritate the officer instantly. "Turn around. Hands on the hood. Spread them." Harlan Voss turned, placing his palms on the cold metal of the Impala. He felt Harlan's hands roughly patting him down, checking pockets, waistband, ankles. "Officer, really check my ID. My name is Harlan Voss. I work for—" "Shut up!" Harlan slammed Harlan Voss's face down onto the hood. "Hey!" Harlan Voss shouted, the metal biting into his cheek. "That is unnecessary force. Resisting arrest," Harlan shouted for the benefit of the body cam he hadn't turned on yet. "Stop resisting. Stop reaching for my weapon." "I am not moving," Harlan Voss yelled back, panic starting to mix with his anger. "I am standing still. Lang, cuff him." The rookie rushed forward, her hands shaking as she pulled Harlan Voss's wrists behind his back. The steel cuffs clicked tight, too tight. They pinched the ulnar nerve, sending a shock of pain up his arm. "You're making a mistake," Harlan Voss hissed through gritted teeth. "The only mistake was you coming into my town, boy," Harlan whispered in his ear. "Officer Lang, search the car," Harlan ordered, spinning Harlan Voss around and shoving him toward the patrol unit. "Sarge, maybe we should just run his ID first," Lang suggested tentatively. "He doesn't seem high." "Do I pay you to think, Lang? I pay you to learn," Harlan snapped. "Toss the car. Find the weed. If you can't find it, look harder." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Look harder. Find something that isn't there. Harlan Voss was shoved into the back of the cruiser. The hard plastic seat was unforgiving. The cage separated him from the front, but the glass was thin enough to hear. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4 Alpha." Harlan keyed the radio on his shoulder. "One male in custody, resisting, possible possession with intent. We're tossing the vehicle now." Harlan Voss sat in the dark, his mind racing. He needed to signal the surveillance van. His wire was still on his chest, but the receiver in the car was out of range of his voice now. He hoped to God the agent in the van was awake and seeing the GPS dot on the Impala not moving. Through the window, Harlan Voss watched Harlan leaning into the Impala. He wasn't searching. He was planting. Harlan Voss saw the motion clearly. A quick dip of the hand into his own vest pocket, then a movement under the driver's seat. Harlan Voss closed his eyes. Heroine, or crack. Harlan was planting a felony amount. This wasn't just a harassment stop anymore. This was a career ender, a life ender. If Harlan Voss was booked on felony possession, even if he cleared it up later with the Bureau, the mugshot would be public. Kane would see it. The cartel would know he was either a criminal or a cop who got burned. His cover would be incinerated. He had to play his ace. Harlan walked back to the cruiser, a smirk plastered on his face. He opened the driver's side door and slid in. Lang got in the passenger side, looking pale. She held a small, clear baggie filled with white powder. "Look what we found under your seat, Mr. Voss," Harlan said, holding the baggie up to the rear-view mirror so Harlan Voss could see it. "That's a lot of blow for a movie night." "That's not mine," Harlan Voss said, his voice deadly calm. "And you know it." "Save it for the judge," Harlan said, starting the engine. "Officer Harlan," Harlan Voss said, leaning forward as much as the cuffs allowed, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. My name is Special Agent Harlan Voss, Federal Bureau of Investigation, badge number 8944. I'm currently active in an undercover operation. If you drive this car 1 inch, you are interfering with a federal investigation." Silence filled the car. Lang turned around so fast her neck popped. Her eyes were wide. "Sarge?" Harlan didn't blink. He stared at Harlan Voss in the rearview mirror. For a second, Harlan Voss thought he saw fear, but it was quickly replaced by arrogance. "FBI?" Harlan let out a short, barking laugh. "Yeah, and I'm the Queen of England. I've heard every lie in the book, junkie, but impersonating a federal officer, that's another felony to add to the list." "Check my wallet," Harlan Voss urged. "There is a second ID behind the license. Or call the Chicago field office. Ask for Assistant Director Marcus Hale." "I'm not calling anyone," Harlan said, putting the car in drive. "You think you're smart? You think you can scare me? You're going to the cage and you're going to rot." "Lang," Harlan Voss shifted his gaze to the rookie. "Officer Lang, you took an oath. You saw him plant that. Check my boot, left boot. There is a Velcro pouch." Lang looked at Harlan. "Sarge, maybe we should check, just to be sure." "Don't you dare touch him," Harlan warned her, his voice low and dangerous. "He's trying to manipulate you. He's a criminal. He lies. That's what they do."
Ơi ơi à, gió đưa lá đà mãi đi theo những chặng đường con qua, anh chẳng ngà nhuộm tình câu hát. Hỡi người đừng vội sang ngang, bên sông còn đò.
He ran the scenarios. If he was booked, his fingerprints would hit the system. The FBI flags would pop up. Yes, but by then, the booking officer, the desk sergeant, and anyone in the lobby would see him. The record would be created. He needed to stop this before he was processed. "You're making a mistake that you can't undo, Harlan," Harlan Voss said from the back. "Shut up," Harlan said, turning up the radio. Rock music blasted, drowning out Harlan Voss's voice. Harlan Voss leaned his head back against the cage. He focused on his breathing. He had to remain calm. He had to be the professional. In the front seat, the dynamic was shifting. Officer Lang was silent, staring out the window. She was gripping the door handle tightly. She had seen the baggie. She knew she hadn't found it. She had searched that side of the car. She knew Harlan had pulled it from nowhere. "Sarge," Lang said, her voice barely audible over the music. "What?" Harlan shouted. If he is a Fed." Harlan slammed his hand on the steering wheel. "He is not a Fed, Sophia. Look at him. Does he look like the FBI to you? He's a street thug. He's trash. We are taking out the trash. That is the job." "But he knew the assistant director's name," Lang pressed. "Everyone knows Hale's name. It's on the news," Harlan scoffed. Relax. You'll get a commendation for this bust. High-level dealer, taking weight off the streets. You're welcome. They pulled into the precinct Sallyport. The heavy steel garage doors rolled down behind them, sealing them inside the concrete belly of the station. Harlan Voss felt the car stop. The music died. Harlan got out, adjusting his belt. He opened the back door and grabbed Harlan Voss by the arm, hauling him out with unnecessary force. "Welcome to the Hilton," Harlan sneered. Harlan Voss stumbled, but caught his footing. He stood tall, looking Harlan dead in the eye. "Last chance, Harlan. Call it in. Verify my status." "Get moving." Harlan shoved him toward the steel door leading to booking. As they walked through the hallway, the smell of industrial cleaner and sweat hit them. They passed a few other officers who nodded at Harlan. "Got a live one, Bulldog?" one asked. "Big fish," Harlan bragged. "Resisting, assaulting an officer, possession with intent, impersonating a Fed." The other cops laughed. "A Fed? That's a new one." They reached the booking desk. The desk sergeant, a weary-looking man named Elias Thorne with graying hair and reading glasses, looked up from his computer. "What you got, Bryce?" Thorne asked, rubbing his eyes. "Male, no ID on person. Says he's FBI." Harlan chuckled, tossing the baggie of white powder onto the high counter. "Found this under his seat." Thorne looked at the drugs, then at Harlan Voss. He squinted. "Name?" Thorne asked Harlan Voss. "Special Agent Harlan Voss. Badge 8944. Check the system, Sergeant. Do it now." The authority in Harlan Voss's voice made Thorne pause. It wasn't the screaming of a drunk or the desperate pleading of a dealer. It was the command tone of someone who gave orders. Thorne's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Don't waste your time, Thorne," Harlan said, leaning on the counter. "Just book him as John Doe for now. We'll print him." "Type the name," Harlan Voss said, his eyes locking onto Thorne. "Harlan Voss, VOSS. Thorne looked at Harlan, then back at Harlan Voss. He typed the name. He hit enter. A second passed, then another. Suddenly, a red alert box flashed on Thorne's screen. A silent alarm triggered on his terminal. Thorne's face went pale. He looked at the screen, read the text, and his mouth fell open. Subject, Voss Harlan. Status, active federal agent / level 5 clearance. Warning, undercover operative. Do not process. Contact SAC Lang immediately. Thorne swallowed hard. He looked up at Harlan, his eyes wide with genuine panic. "Bryce," Thorne whispered. "What? Printer jammed?" Harlan joked. "Bryce, you need to uncuff him," Thorne said, his voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" Harlan frowned. "Uncuff him, right now." Thorne stood up, his hand instinctively moving toward the phone on his desk. The red phone that connected directly to downtown. "He's real, Bryce. Oh God, he's actually a Fed." Harlan froze. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked like a wax figure. The smirk evaporated. Harlan Voss stood there, the cuffs still biting into his wrists, and watched the realization crash over Harlan like a tidal wave. "That's impossible," Harlan stammered. I found the drugs." "You planted the drugs," Harlan Voss corrected, his voice echoing in the silent booking room. "And you did it while I was recording." Harlan's eyes darted to Harlan Voss's chest. "Lang," Harlan Voss said, turning to the rookie who was standing by the door, looking like she was about to be sick. "Take these cuffs off me." Lang didn't hesitate this time. She rushed forward, fumbling with her keys. She unlocked the cuffs. Harlan Voss rubbed his wrists. He didn't run, he didn't fight. He just reached into his boot, ripped the Velcro, and pulled out his gold shield. He slammed it onto the counter next to the bag of baking soda Harlan had planted. "Sergeant Thorne," Harlan Voss said, his voice ice-cold. "Lock down this building. No one leaves, especially not him." He pointed a finger at Harlan. Harlan took a step back, his hand twitching toward his gun. "Don't even think about it!" A booming voice came from the precinct entrance. The double doors burst open. 6 men in heavy tactical gear stormed the lobby. Emblazoned in bold yellow letters across their navy blue windbreakers was the acronym that stopped hearts: FBI. Leading the charge was Special Agent in Charge, SAC Victor Lang. He was a man carved out of granite, a 20-year veteran of the Bureau who had hunted terrorists and mob bosses alike. Tonight, he looked angrier than Harlan Voss had ever seen him. "Federal agents," Lang bellowed, his voice filling the cavernous lobby. "Nobody move. Hands where I can see them. Now." The reaction in the 9th Precinct was chaotic. Officers who were drinking coffee, filling out paperwork, or chatting by the water cooler froze. Hands instinctively went to holsters. A dangerous reflex in a room suddenly filled with AR-15, pointed at their chests. "Drop your weapons!" an FBI tactical operator shouted. "Do it! Do it now!" Sergeant Thorne, still behind the desk, raised his hands high in the air, stepping away from the silent alarm button he had already pressed. "Don't shoot! We're friendly! We're friendly!" Officer Bryce Harlan stood frozen near the booking counter. His hand was still hovering near his Glock. He looked from Harlan Voss, who was massaging his bruised wrists, to the tactical team swarming the room. The color had not returned to his face. He looked like a man waking up in a nightmare. "Harlan," Lang barked, spotting the badge nameplate. "Touch that weapon, and it'll be the last thing you ever do. Hands on your head, interlace your fingers, get on your knees." Harlan hesitated for a fraction of a second. It was the hesitation of a bully who had never been punched back. He looked at his fellow officers, silently begging for backup. But the blue wall of silence was crumbling under the weight of federal jurisdiction. No one moved to help him. The other cops saw the writing on the wall. They saw the badge Harlan Voss had slammed on the counter. They knew this was a losing battle. Slowly, defeatedly, Harlan sank to his knees on the dirty linoleum floor. Lang holstered his weapon and marched over to Harlan Voss. He did a quick visual scan of his agent. "You hurt?" Lang asked, his voice low but intense. "Just my pride and some nerve damage in the wrist," Harlan Voss replied, flexing his fingers. He pinched the ulna, deliberate. Lang's jaw tightened. He turned his gaze to Harlan. "You have the right to remain silent," Lang began, reciting the Miranda warning with a venomous cadence. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As the tactical team secured the lobby, a door at the back of the station swung open. Lieutenant Rex Donovan, the watch commander, stormed out. Donovan was a relic of the old Chicago PD. Thick mustache, suspenders, and an attitude that said he owned the block. "What the hell is going on in my house?" Donovan shouted, his face purple with rage. "Who are you people? You can't come in here waving guns around. This is a Chicago police precinct." Lang stepped forward, meeting Donovan in the center of the room. The height difference was negligible, but the difference in authority was massive. "I'm Special Agent in Charge Lang. This is no longer your house, Lieutenant. This is a crime scene." "Crime scene?" Donovan sputtered. "What crime? We brought in a suspect for possession." Lang pointed at Harlan Voss. "That suspect is a federal agent working an active RICO case. Your officer just kidnapped him, assaulted him, and attempted to frame him with narcotics." Donovan looked at Harlan Voss, then at Harlan kneeling on the floor. His eyes narrowed. He was calculating, trying to figure out how to spin this, how to cover it up. "It's a misunderstanding," Donovan said, his voice dropping to a conciliatory tone. "My officer made a mistake. If the guy's a Fed, he didn't identify himself properly. We can work this out. Let's go to my office, have a coffee, and... There is no coffee, Harlan Voss interrupted, stepping forward. He picked up the baggie of white powder from the counter, the evidence Harlan had planted. This is getting bagged as evidence against your officer, Lieutenant, and we're not going to your office. We're taking your servers. We're taking the body cam footage. We're taking the dash cam data, and we are taking Officer Harlan into federal custody. You can't do that, Donovan yelled. I have jurisdiction here. Not anymore, Lang said, pulling a folded document from his jacket pocket. He slapped it against Donovan's chest. Federal warrant, signed by Judge Abernathy minutes ago. We have probable cause to believe that officers in the 9th Precinct are conspiring to obstruct justice and violate civil rights under Title 18, Section 242 of the U.S. Code. We own this building until we say otherwise. Donovan stared at the warrant. He looked deflated. The fight went out of him. Lang turned to his team. Secure the evidence room. Secure the server room. Nobody touches a computer. Nobody shreds a document. If I see a paper shredder turn on, I'm arresting the person feeding it. 2 FBI agents grabbed Harlan by the arms and hauled him up. They swapped his standard-issue cuffs for heavy federal restraints. Lang! Harlan Voss called out. The room went quiet. Officer Sophia Lang was standing in the corner, shaking. She looked terrified. Don't say a word, Lang, Harlan shouted as he was dragged away. Union rep! Demand a rep! Harlan Voss ignored him and walked up to Lang. She flinched as he approached. Officer Lang, Harlan Voss said softly. You have a choice right now. A very small window of opportunity. You can be a defendant or you can be a witness. Lang looked at Lieutenant Donovan, who was glaring at her, silently ordering her to shut up. Then she looked at Harlan Voss. She saw the bruising on his cheek where Harlan had slammed him. She remembered the baggie appearing from nowhere. Lang's voice cracked. I don't want to go to jail. Then tell the truth, Harlan Voss said. Did you see him find the drugs? Lang took a deep breath. She closed her eyes, tears squeezing out. No, she whispered. He had it in his vest. I saw him take it out of his vest before he reached under the seat. Liar! Donovan shouted. She's a rookie. She doesn't know what she saw. Get her statement recorded immediately, Lang ordered an agent. She's under federal protection now. Harlan Voss watched as Lang was led away to a quiet room. The first brick had fallen. But as Harlan Voss looked around the station, at the sullen faces of the other officers, at the nervous sweat on Lieutenant Donovan's forehead, he realized something. Harlan wasn't just a bad apple. He was too comfortable. He was too arrogant. He acted like he had insurance. Harlan Voss walked over to the desk where Thorne sat. He leaned in close. The radio, Harlan Voss said. Pull the logs. What logs? Thorne asked, nervous. When Harlan stopped me, he called dispatch. Who answered? Thorne tapped the keys. Dispatch. Looks like Central. No, Harlan Voss said. He didn't talk to Central. He keyed a secondary channel. I heard the click. It was a direct line. Thorne frowned. He dug deeper into the comms log. You're right. He keyed channel 4. That's a tactical channel, usually reserved for SWAT or private comms. Play it, Harlan Voss commanded. Thorne hesitated, then clicked to play. The audio was grainy, but distinct. Harlan. Target acquired. Alley off 4th. It's the buyer. I'm taking him off the board. Voice on radio. Clean. Harlan. Dirty. Planting the package now. He won't make the meat. Voice on radio. Good. Bring him to the house. We'll handle the rest. The Kingsmen send their regards. Harlan Voss felt a chill run down his spine. The station went deadly silent. Even Lang stopped issuing orders to listen. That wasn't a police dispatcher, Lang said, his face hardening into stone. No, Harlan Voss said, staring at the speaker. That was the cartel. This wasn't just police brutality. Harlan wasn't just trying to arrest a black man in the wrong neighborhood. Harlan was an enforcer for the Kingsman Syndicate. He had intercepted Harlan Voss, not because he was profiling him, but because the cartel knew Harlan Voss was coming to meet Kane. The 9th Precinct wasn't just corrupt, it was compromised. Lock the doors, Harlan Voss said, his voice ringing with finality. Nobody leaves. We have a mole, and I think I know who it is. The precinct had been transformed into a makeshift command center. The blinds were drawn. FBI technicians were scrubbing the hard drives. The local cops had been herded into the break room, stripped of their weapons, and were being guarded by 2 agents with MP5s. Harlan Voss sat in the interrogation room, the same room Harlan had intended to throw him in. But now, Harlan Voss was on the freedom side of the table, and Harlan was shackled to the chair. Harlan looked smaller without his uniform shirt. The FBI had stripped him down to his undershirt to search for additional wires or contraband. He sat slumped, staring at the steel table. "You're in a lot of trouble, Bryce," Harlan Voss said, sliding a cup of water across the table. He didn't offer coffee. Harlan didn't drink. "I want my lawyer. I want the FOP representative." "You'll get them," Harlan Voss said, sitting down. "But your lawyer can't help you with what we just found on the radio logs." Harlan flinched. A microscopic reaction, but Harlan Voss caught it. "We heard the call, Bryce. The Kingsmen send their regards." "Oh, that's what your handler said." "I don't know what you're talking about," Harlan mumbled. "Radio interference." "Don't insult my intelligence." Harlan Voss leaned in. "We know you're on the payroll, but here's the thing. The Kingsmen don't like loose ends. You failed. You were supposed to take me off the board so I couldn't meet Kane. Instead, you brought the entire FBI down on their heads." Harlan Voss let that sink in. "When Kane finds out you led us here, when he finds out you're in custody, do you think he's going to send a lawyer? Or is he going to send a cleaner?" Harlan looked up. The fear in his eyes was genuine now. It wasn't the fear of losing his job. It was the fear of losing his life. "You can't protect me," Harlan whispered. "They have eyes everywhere, even in jail, especially in jail." "I can protect you," Harlan Voss lied, or half-lied. "I can put you in witness protection. New name, new life, someplace sunny, Arizona maybe. But you have to give me the voice on the radio. Who is the handler?" Harlan shook his head. "If I talk, my family is dead. If you don't talk, you are dead, and your family is left with the legacy of a dirty cop." Suddenly, the door to the interrogation room opened. Lang poked his head in. "Harlan, you need to see this." Harlan Voss stepped out into the hallway. Lang held up a tablet. "We traced the frequency from the radio call," Lang said grimly. "It didn't bounce off a cell tower. It was a short-range transmission." "Short range?" Harlan Voss frowned. "How short?" "Inside the building," Lang said. "The handler is in the precinct." Harlan Voss felt the blood rush to his head. "It's inside the house. We're triangulating the signal source now," Lang continued. "It came from the southeast corner office and the second floor." Harlan Voss visualized the layout of the station. The southeast corner. That's the captain's office. Captain Walter Briggs, the precinct commander. who was currently on vacation in Florida, according to the duty roster. "Briggs is supposed to be away," Harlan Voss said. "Well, someone is in his office, using his encrypted radio," Lang said. "Let's go." Harlan Voss and Lang, flanked by 4 tactical agents, moved silently up the stairs. The station was eerie, the usual bustle of police work replaced by the tense silence of a federal raid. They reached the second-floor landing. The hallway was empty. At the end of the hall, the frosted glass door of the captain's office was dark. Harlan Voss drew his service weapon, a Glock 19 he had retrieved from his impounded personal effects. He stacked up on the left side of the door. Lang took the right. Lang nodded. 3, 2, 1. Lang tried the handle. Locked. He signaled the breacher. A specialized agent stepped forward with a battering ram. With one swing, the lock shattered. The door flew open. "Federal agents!" The room was dark, illuminated only by the glow of a computer monitor and the street lights filtering through the blinds. Sitting in the captain's high-backed leather chair was not Captain Briggs. It was Lieutenant Rex Donovan, the watch commander who had been screaming about jurisdiction downstairs only minutes ago. He had slipped away during the confusion of the initial raid. Donovan was holding a radio in one hand and a shredded pile of documents in the other. A lighter was flicking in his shaking hand, trying to ignite the paper. "Drop it!" Harlan Voss shouted, aiming his weapon at Donovan's chest. Donovan froze. He looked at the lighter, then at the agents. He smiled a sad, pathetic smile. "It's too late," Donovan said. "He knows." "Who knows?" Harlan Voss demanded, stepping into the room. "Kane! I just warned him. He's gone. You'll never find him." Donovan dropped the lighter. The papers, ledgers by the look of them, caught fire instantly. Lang rushed forward, knocking Donovan out of the chair and stomping on the flames. "Get the fire extinguisher! Secure him!" Harlan Voss grabbed Donovan by the collar, hauling him up. "You sold out your own badge. For what? Money?" Donovan laughed, a wheezing sound. "Money? No, son. Survival. You don't say no to the King's men. You play ball or they visit your house while your kids are sleeping. Harlan was just a pawn. I'm just a pawn." "Who is the king?" Harlan Voss asked. "You're standing in his city," Donovan spat, "and you just started a war." The fire was out, but the ledgers were half destroyed. The tactical team cuffed Donovan. "Harlan!" Lang called out from the captain's desk. He was looking at the computer screen Donovan had been using. "You need to look at this." Harlan Voss walked over. On the screen was a live surveillance feed. It wasn't showing a street corner or a bank lobby. It was showing the interior of the Rusty Anchor, the dive bar across the street where Harlan Voss was supposed to meet his contact. "They have cameras in the meeting spot," Harlan Voss realized. "They were watching for me." "Look closer," Lang pointed. In the grainy black and white footage, a man was sitting in the back booth. He was checking his watch. It was Kane. "He's not gone," Harlan Voss whispered. "He's still there." Donovan lied. Donovan, currently being dragged out the door, shouted back, "I tried."
Mãi đi theo những chặng đường con qua, anh chẳng ngà nhuộm tình câu hát. Hỡi người đừng vội sang ngang, bên sông còn đò.
He doesn't know Harlan failed. He thinks I'm just late. Lang looked at Harlan Voss. "No, absolutely not. It's too dangerous. We have the precinct locked down, but we don't have eyes on the bar. It could be an ambush. If we don't go now, we lose Kane," Harlan Voss argued. "He's the key to the whole Midwest distribution. If he walks out that door, he disappears forever." Donovan said he tried to warn him, but he didn't answer. That means we have a window. "Harlan, you've been assaulted, cuffed, and identified as a Fed in this building. If anyone in that bar has a scanner, Donovan was using an encrypted channel, Harlan Voss countered. The street guys don't know yet. I can still make the play. Lang looked at the screen, then at Harlan Voss. He saw the determination in the agent's eyes. You have 5 minutes, Lang said. I'll have snipers on the roof of the station in 3. I'll have a team at the back door. But inside, you're on your own. Harlan Voss checked his gun. He adjusted his hoodie. He looked in the reflection of the monitor. The bruises on his face were forming, dark and angry. Perfect, Harlan Voss said, touching his swollen cheek. I look like I just got into a fight with a cop and got away. That's exactly the story I need. Go, Lang said. And Harlan, don't get dead. Harlan Voss ran out of the office, down the stairs, and toward the back exit of the precinct. He was going back into the shadows, but this time, the hunter was awake. The night air felt different now, sharper, colder. Harlan Voss crossed the street, keeping his head down, his gait uneven. He didn't have to pretend to be hurt. His wrist throbbed with a dull, sickening ache, and the side of his face felt like it was on fire. The rusty anchor was a relic of a dying neighborhood. The neon sign buzzed with a dying flicker. The windows were painted black. It was the kind of place where people went to hide, not to be seen. Harlan Voss pushed the heavy door open. The smell hit him first. Stale beer, bleach, and something metallic. The jukebox was silent. The bartender, a man with a roadmap of scars on his forearms, looked up, wiped a glass with a dirty rag, and looked back down. He knew better than to stare. There were only 3 other people in the bar. They were sitting in the circular booth at the far back, shrouded in shadow. 2 of them were muscle, Kingsman soldiers, wearing leather jackets that barely concealed the bulges of shoulder holsters. Between them sat Damian Kane. Kane was smaller than the legends described. He wore a sharp gray suit that cost more than the building they were sitting in. He was sipping a glass of mineral water. He looked like an accountant, but Harlan Voss knew better. This was the man who had turned the Midwest drug trade into a paramilitary operation. Harlan Voss walked toward the booth. Every step echoed on the sticky floor. One of the soldiers stood up, hand moving to his chest. "Sit down, Rico," Kane said softly, his voice smooth and cultured. "Our guest is finally here." Harlan Voss stopped at the edge of the table. He didn't apologize for being late. Apologies were a sign of weakness in this world. "Rough night?" Kane asked, gesturing to the empty seat opposite him. Harlan Voss slid into the booth. He leaned forward into the light, letting Kane see the fresh purple bruising on his cheekbone and the cut on his lip. "The 9th Precinct has a heavy welcoming committee," Harlan Voss grunted, his voice raspy. Kane chuckled, a dry sound. "Ah, the bulldogs. They are aggressive, yes, but they are useful. They keep the competition away. They almost kept me away." Harlan Voss lied, spinning the narrative. "Cop named Harlan pulled me over, tried to plant a felony amount on me. I had to ditch the car and run through the rail yard." Kane's eyes narrowed. He studied Harlan Voss's face, looking for the lie. This was the moment. If Kane sensed fear, if he sensed the deception, Harlan Voss would die in this booth. "You ran from the police," Kane asked, "and yet you are here. Risky." "Business comes first," Harlan Voss said, locking eyes with the kingpin. "And I don't get paid if I don't make the meat. Besides, those cops couldn't catch a cold. They're too busy counting the money you pay them." Kane smiled. It was a genuine smile. He appreciated the insult to the police. It validated his power over them. "True," Kane agreed. "They are expensive pets, but necessary." Harlan Voss tapped the table. I don't have all night, Kane. The heat is on out there. Do we have a deal or not? 50 kilos, pure. My transport is waiting 3 blocks east. Kane nodded to Rico. The bodyguard reached under the table and pulled out a black duffel bag. He unzipped it just enough to reveal the vacuum-sealed bricks. The product is here, Kane said, but the price has changed. We agreed on a price, Harlan Voss said, feigning anger. That was before you brought the heat to my doorstep, Kane replied coolly. Hazard pay, 10% on top. Harlan Voss clenched his jaw. He had to look angry, but internally he was cheering. Hazard pay. That was an admission of illicit business. Combined with the drugs on the table, it was enough to put Kane away for life. Fine, Harlan Voss spat. 10%, but this is the last time. Next time, tell your dogs in blue to stay on the porch. Agreed, Kane said. He reached out a hand. To partnership. Harlan Voss hesitated. He looked at the hand. The hand that had ordered hits, ruined lives, and corrupted an entire police precinct. Harlan Voss reached into his hoodie pocket, but he didn't pull out cash. He pulled out a folded napkin from the bar. He placed it on the table. One more thing, Harlan Voss said. What is this? Kane asked, frowning. That, Harlan Voss said, his voice dropping the street accent and returning to the crisp, authoritative tone of a federal agent, is the signal. Crash! The skylight above the pool table shattered as a flashbang grenade dropped into the room. The folded napkin hit the table with the softness of a feather, but in the silence of the bar, it might as well have been a gavel, striking a sounding block. Kane stared at it. The white paper stood out starkly against the dark wood, a simple, innocuous object that felt terrifyingly out of place. He looked up, his brow furrowing as he tried to decode the gesture. He looked at Harlan Voss, and for the first time, the kingpin saw past the hoodie, past the bruise, and past the street facade. He saw the cold, predatory intelligence of a hunter who had just snapped the trap shut. What is this? Kane whispered, his hand inching toward the table's edge. That, Harlan Voss said, his voice dropping an octave, shedding the raspy street dialect for the crisp, commanding tone of federal authority, is the end of your reign. Harlan Voss didn't blink. And it's the signal. Kane's eyes widened. He opened his mouth to scream a command to his guards, but the sound never left his throat. Crash. The skylight above the pool table didn't just break, it disintegrated. A canister, the size of a soda can, dropped into the center of the room, spinning on the floorboards. Bang. The flashbang grenade detonated with a concussive force that sucked the air out of the room. A blinding white light, brighter than the sun, seared the retinas of everyone facing it, accompanied by a deafening, chest-thumping boom that shattered the liquor bottles behind the bar. FBI! Federal agents! Get down! Get down! The roar of the breach team was a physical force. The front door was rammed off its hinges, splintering inward. The back door flew open with a metallic clang. From every entrance, armored figures in olive-drab tactical gear poured in like a flood. The beams of their weapon lights, cutting through the lingering smoke like lasers. Harlan Voss, who had squeezed his eyes shut and covered his ears a split second before the blast, moved while Kane was still reeling. He launched himself across the booth, scattering the glasses and the duffel bag. He tackled Kane, driving his shoulder into the kingpin's chest and slamming him into the padded leather of the seat. Kane was disoriented, but he was fighting for his life. He clawed at Harlan Voss's face, his fingernails digging into the fresh bruise on his cheek. He screamed in Spanish, a primal sound of rage and panic, reaching for the gold-plated Desert Eagle tucked into his waistband. "Don't do it!" Harlan Voss roared, jamming his forearm against Kane's throat. "Give it up, Kane. It's over." Kane managed to grip the handle of his gun, but before he could draw it, a heavy boot slammed onto his wrist. Agent Lang stood over the booth, his AR-15 trained on Kane's head. "Let go of the weapon," Lang commanded, his voice deadly calm amidst the chaos. "Or you die in this booth." Kane froze. He looked at the barrel of the rifle, then at Harlan Voss, who was pinning him down with the weight of absolute justice. Slowly, Kane released the gun. Clear left, clear right. Subject 2 secured, Subject 3 secured. The shouts of the tactical team echoed through the bar. The two bodyguards, Rico and the other muscle, were already on the floor, zip-tied and groaning, having been neutralized by non-lethal beanbag rounds during the initial breach. Harlan Voss hauled Kane out of the booth and spun him around. He kicked the kingpin's legs apart and slammed him against the wall. "Damien Kane," Harlan Voss panted, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "You are under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, and the corruption of a public official under RICO statutes." Harlan Voss grabbed his own handcuffs, his federal-issue steel cuffs, and slapped them onto Kane's wrists. The click was the most satisfying sound Harlan Voss had heard all night. It was the sound of months of undercover work, fear, and near-death experiences finally paying off. "You have the right to remain silent," Harlan Voss recited, spinning Kane around to face him. "And I suggest you use it because every word you said tonight about the hazard pay, about the cops being your expensive pets. We have it all in high definition." Kane looked around the room. His empire had crumbled in less than 60 seconds. The drugs were being bagged. His men were in custody. And the man he thought was a desperate buyer was standing tall, adjusting a badge that hung around his neck. "You played the part well," Kane spat, blood trickling from his nose. "But you can't kill the Kingsmen. We have roots deep in this city." "We're not just pulling out the weeds, Kane," Lang said, stepping forward. "Tonight we're burning the whole garden. Get him out of here." Two agents grabbed Kane and marched him toward the door. Harlan Voss leaned against the bar, taking a deep breath. His body ached. His wrist was throbbing where Harlan had cuffed him earlier, and his face felt like it had gone 10 rounds with a boxer. But he felt light. "You okay?" Lang asked, lowering his weapon. "I need an ice pack and a week off," Harlan Voss quipped, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But yeah, I'm good." "You did good, Harlan," Lang said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Now, come on. There's one more loose end we need to tie up. You're going to want to see this." Harlan Voss followed Lang out of the suffocating stale air of the rusty anchor and into the night. The scene outside was apocalyptic. The entire block had been cordoned off. The flashing red and blue lights of dozens of different law enforcement vehicles painted the brick buildings in a strobing, surreal disco of authority. But it wasn't just the FBI. The state police were there, the DEA was there, and directly across the street, the 9th Precinct was being purged. It was a spectacle that would be on the morning news across the country. Federal agents were carrying boxes of files, computers, and servers out of the station. The blue wall hadn't just been breached, it had been demolished. Harlan Voss stood on the curb, the cool wind hitting his face. He watched as a line of men in handcuffs were led out of the precinct's main doors. First came Lieutenant Donovan, the bluster and arrogance gone. He walked with his head down, trying to hide his face from the cameras, looking every bit the small, greedy man he truly was. Then came the sergeants, the desk officers who had looked the other way, and then, finally, came the man of the hour, Officer Bryce Harlan. Harlan wasn't hiding. He was looking around frantically, his eyes darting from the agents to the cameras, searching for a lifeline. He looked like a man waking up in a nightmare he couldn't control. He was stripped of his belt, his badge, and his gun. He wore only his uniform trousers and the undershirt Harlan Voss had seen him in earlier. As the agents led him toward the transport van, Harlan looked across the street. His eyes locked onto Harlan Voss. Time seemed to slow down. The noise of the sirens, the shouting of the press, the crackle of radios, it all faded into the background. Harlan stopped. The agents pushed him, but he resisted for a second, staring at the man he had thrown against the hood of a car hours ago. The man he had called boy. The man he had tried to frame. Harlan Voss didn't shout. He didn't gloat. He simply stepped forward into the pool of light from a street lamp. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his gold shield, the Federal Bureau of Investigation badge that Harlan had refused to believe existed. Harlan Voss held it up, letting the light catch the polished brass. Then slowly, deliberately, Harlan Voss tapped the badge 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. The message was clear. I told you. You should have checked the ID. Harlan's face crumpled. The color drained away, leaving him looking gray and sickly. His shoulders slumped as the realization of his future hit him with the force of a physical blow. There would be no bail. There would be no union protection. He was going to federal prison, a place where ex-cops, especially dirty ones, had a life expectancy measured in days, not years. He had tried to destroy Harlan Voss to protect a cartel. Now, the cartel was gone. His career was over and his freedom was a memory. The agents shoved Harlan forward and he stumbled into the back of the armored van. The heavy doors slammed shut on his life as a free man. That, Lang said, standing beside Harlan Voss, is what I call a clean sweep. A mob of reporters, sensing the main character of the drama, broke through the police line and rushed toward Harlan Voss. Microphones were shoved in his face. Agent, can you tell us what happened? Is it true the 9th Precinct was working for the cartel? How deep does the corruption go? Harlan Voss looked at the cameras. He looked at the precinct, a building that was supposed to be a sanctuary, now a crime scene. Tonight, Harlan Voss said, his voice steady and projecting clearly over the noise. We sent a message. The badge is a promise to the community. It stands for protection, integrity, and justice. When you use it to oppress the people you swore to serve, you don't just lose the badge. Harlan Voss looked at the van driving Harlan away. You lose your freedom. Nobody is above the law, not the Kingsmen, and certainly not the people hiding behind a uniform. Harlan Voss turned his back on the cameras and walked toward the command vehicle. The night was over. The job was done. And for the first time in a long time, the streets felt a little bit cleaner. And that is the incredible true story of how one corrupt officer's ego brought down an entire criminal empire. Bryce Harlan thought he was hunting a victim. Instead, he caught a wolf in sheep's clothing. In the aftermath, the fallout was massive. Lieutenant Donovan and Bryce Harlan were both sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The 9th Precinct was completely dissolved and reorganized under new leadership. Damian Kane turned state's evidence to avoid the death penalty, dismantling the Kingsman Syndicate for good. It just goes to show, karma doesn't always come instantly, but when it does, it hits hard. Harlan had those minutes to do the right thing. He chose wrong, and he paid the ultimate price. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, do me a favor. Smash that like button. It tells YouTube you want more stories like this. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a shocking twist. What do you think? Did Harlan get what he deserved, or was the sentence too light? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.